I'm Tom Ryan, Barbara Engelhardt, right here I'm in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and Dad and Barbara are in Loveland, Colorado. This is the 12th of August, 2020. And the topic today for Tom Ryan Remembers is about end of life talk, end of life ideas, concepts, and perceptions. So, and I also have my son, Sheridan, possibly joining us if he can pop over for a minute and just say hi as well. So, greetings to you. How are you today?
Happy birthday to Sheridan, who is 25, my grandson, and Dan, my son, and I'm almost 90. And a friend of mine said that they asked him what he thought of dying, what he thought of death. And he said, I thought about it, I considered it, and I'm in favor of it.
Well,
now, I could endorse that because there's a lot of alternatives, and the idea of living forever is just obnoxious. Not that I'm anxious to die at all. I'm very happy marriage, happy time. I live here at Good Sam's Senior Village in Loveland, Colorado, and we're part of the biggest senior living community in the United States. And it's really a nice place, and we have a good time here. Even during the pandemic, we get to do things that we wouldn't be able to do if we were living in our home about a mile from here. So we're happy to be here. But some people say, oh, I wouldn't want to live in a senior community like that. And they don't say why, but of course, if you ask them, they'd say, there's a lot of death there, right? And I'd say, yes, there is. That's if you haven't faced up to it, you do here at Good Sam's. The lady across the street, 99 years old, died in her own home, and they came, the ambulance came, no siren. We knew what it meant. And she went out, she was living with her son, her handicapped son, who's in his 60s. And Barbara went over there and knocked on the door and brought some cookies and told him that if he needed anything, to let us know and we would help him. And that's what's wonderful about a place like this. We have a lot of death, that's true. Every week we have a weekly little newspaper, mimeographed newspaper, and they list the number of people who have passed on. They don't use the word death either, passed on or they've made their journey, they say, and they're named. And we have a spiritual life center. And if they've been here for any length of time, they have a lot of people that know them, and they often have a service there. But most of our deaths are people who come into the nursing home, and the average nursing home resident lives there 1 year. That's an average. And so we don't get to know them. I mean, they've come into the nursing home directly, and they never lived here when they were well and before that.
I'd like to say a couple of things too about living here. One is the people who live here are not all decrepit and on the verge of death. You can live in this community if you're 55 or older. And many of the people who live in the twin homes, and even some who live in the big apartment building or assisted living, they're fascinating people. They have lived all over the world. They have done every kind of occupation imaginable. Just yesterday, I was working at the country store. I do that for 2 hours a week on Tuesdays, and I get to meet a lot of people that live in the apartments because they usually don't go out to do a lot of grocery shopping, and some of them don't have cars. But this woman I met, she just moved in 6 weeks ago. She used to teach English as a second language, just like Kevin. She taught in Poland, in other countries. She has had such an amazing life. For 3 years, she lived in Chicago in the Pilsen neighborhood, which is kind of a 20th Street in Chicago, and close in. It's a Mexican neighborhood, and believe it or not, I have a nephew who lives in that same neighborhood, and we were able to talk about the murals on the wall, the Mexican art. There's a lot of artists in that community. So we just got on famously, and that was just one example of some of the people who live there. And we have friends. The Websters who live across the street, he's a retired pastor. Our friends, the Rennicks, are from Nova Scotia. The friend on the other side of the street from us, the Buryanics, I went to college with them. It's really a wonderful place to live. And the other thing, really quickly, about old age is that it's time to pass the baton onto younger people. And younger people have a different way of talking, a different way of viewing the world, and they're the ones who are the leaders. And it's just fine for us to get off the stage. We were just watching Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, in this big rollout for her vice presidency candidacy, and she's the younger generation, and Joe Biden
Is our
understands that he's our age, and he's going to be fine as a president, but he's got to back up from the younger generation, and I think that's just the way it should be. So I agree with Tom. It's good. I agree that it's a good thing to have death.
Yes.
Yes.
Just not right now.
Yeah, we're in no hurry about it at all, but it is necessary. When we first moved in here to Good Sam's, we took a class, and it was taught by a friend of ours who's a retired Presbyterian minister. And he's taught this class 3 times, and we were on the 3rd time. And we each got a book, and it was called Being Mortal. Now we avoid the word death and die, and we use all kinds of euphemisms, it's kind of like sex used to be. You couldn't talk about it. You had to, whispers or you had to use euphemisms. You couldn't, but now that's out when we can talk about sex. But death is still kind of a subject you don't talk about. And so we read this book. It's by a doctor, and his father was a doctor. And in the book, he talks about being mortal, which means you're going to die. That's what the title, they didn't say that on the title. It says to be mortal means that you're going to die. It's inevitable.
Do you think it also means that your clock is always ticking from the time you're born?
That's right.
It's a state that we're in. Mortality is something that drives you sometimes, other times scares you, but it makes you be a survivor, because you know that time is wasting, and
Yes.
there's a limit to that. If we were immortal, we could take our time doing anything, anytime, and not worry about it. But it makes us who we are too, in addition to counting seconds, I think.
And if you don't talk about it, that doesn't prevent it. So there's no way you can prevent it. You can exercise so that you'll have a healthy old age. You can eat well so you'll have a healthy old age. Take the medicines your doctor prescribes so that you will have a good life in old age, but you're not going to live forever. And that's just something you got to face up to, and earlier the better. And what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a big surprise, I think. I don't know what will happen when I die, but I do know that I'm ready, and whenever. And I know I'm way past the averages, so I'm more likely. But people die young too, And I don't want to die from the pandemic. We're trying to protect ourselves as any way we can to avoid, because we know we're very vulnerable. So, death. And the doctor mentioned that of all of your parts of your body, your teeth have the hardest surface, the enamel on your teeth. And when they find skeletons that are hundreds of years old, often there's still teeth there. That's about the only part that's still left. So it gives you an idea that you're dying all the time, right from the start. And the last thing to go is your teeth, but people should make sure their teeth are kept in good order because you need them until you do die. So there's all the parts of your body are going downhill, some faster than others, and you got to accept that and live with that. And it's not that bad. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm as healthy as I am, and I'm grateful every day that I can go out and I can still walk and talk. And we have friends that have Alzheimer's, and one of our friends' husband just died this year after a long session with Alzheimer's. I think it was a blessing in his case, but his wife misses him, and she took care of him to the end. So we know a lot of people and how they're handling it, and they're inspirations to us. There's 5 of us that met for coffee Thursday. 4 of us are former presidents of Kiwanis here in Loveland. And so that was what got us together. Our Kiwanis Club died. We had a last supper for the Kiwanis Club, and then we took our treasury and spent it on the supper, and then it closed down because young people don't want to join Kiwanis anymore. And we had 4 Kiwanis clubs here in town, and now there's only 1 left, and it's teetering on the brink of collapse. So we wound it down, but we still meet because we like to talk about the old days. And we've just introduced a new member, Tim Kathka, and he just moved in here with his wife, and he joined us. And so Tim had his story to tell. So we listened to each other's life stories, and since we're all pretty old, it's interesting stories. We find that fun to talk about the old days and how it was.
So do you think that people join civic clubs or used to learn about the community? If you move from a different city or state, a lot of people used to join just to get to know the area and the neighbors and the business and, kind of the layout of the community. And now they have the internet, and so they don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been very lucky to have the internet. We have Zoom with my family, and then we've been married 10 years, Barbara and I, and then Barbara has 4 children, and we Zoom with her family on another day. So that's wonderful. We have family members in Japan and Ireland and all over the world. Barbara has a granddaughter in Paris, and Kelly in Ireland, and then our children even live in like Minneapolis, and so we see them every week now on Zoom, and it's wonderful to have that. We use the internet a lot. We send emails, and now with Zoom, that's really nice that we didn't have when I was a kid. There were we had radio, didn't even have TV. So we didn't even know what the president looked like. We only heard his voice on the radio. Or when we went to the movies and saw a newsreel, and so then we got to see the president.
So a great deal of the end of life for a lot of people is loneliness, missing their family who is more spread out far and wide these days. And so do you think that having the internet, and especially Zoom, takes a lot of the stress out of being a senior, being aged, um, because you can see your family. It's not this loneliness that a lot of people really do experience. And that's sure been a lot in the press right now. So do you think that's a real benefit, a real de-stressor for being elderly, where you may not have the ability to physically visit everyone?
It will
You
be
could do it
even
this
more
way.
so in the future because in our age group, not everybody is comfortable with the internet. But when you get to be 80 and 90, Dan, you are going to know how to use the internet, and all of your um, associates and friends will know how to do it too. So I think that's going to be a big difference. Right now, the ones in the apartments and the ones in assisted living can't leave their floor except and their loved ones can't come inside the building to visit them. But in the summertime, they have set a tent up outside where their loved ones can come, and with masks and separation, they can visit with each other. But many of those people really do not use Zoom or any kind of internet connection. But getting back to that Being Mortal book, the author said that one of the things about talking about your end of life
Mhm.
is that it's difficult to talk about it with your children. They don't want to hear you talk about your death. And so it's very easy to put off the subject. Like Tom said before, it's like we used to not talk about sex. But talking about the end times is essential for a good death to happen, because your kids and your friends, especially your kids, need to know what to do when you die.
Mhm.
Do you want a funeral? Do you not want a funeral? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want the whole big casket routine? All of the, do you want to have a lot of measures to save you, because a lot of money can be spent and a lot of pain can happen in the last year of your life if you are sick. And some people say, just forget it. Just
Let me die.
let me die. Give me a pill. I don't want to live here anymore. Like Marilyn said,
Yes,
this is
yes.
taking too long. So
Yeah,
these are things that you need to talk about with your children, and it's tough. They don't want to do it, but if you can get them together and talk about it, it's very good.
My first wife,
Yeah.
Barbara, and I got married 10 years ago, but we had a life before that. And my first wife, Marilyn, I remember her saying when she was under hospice care, she said, I think I've accomplished everything I had hoped to accomplish, and I'm ready to die. And I think that's a good thing to be able to say. So if you have something that you haven't accomplished and you still need to do it, I think it's a good idea to work on that, because she said that. And then at the very end, she said, this is taking too long.
Mhm.
I wish it was over. So she was really ready to go. I think she had a good death. I remember when I was in Catholic school as a child, we would pray for a happy death. I had no idea what that meant. I guess it had to do with a happy death would be a go straight to heaven. But a happy death, how could you have a happy death? Well, I think Marilyn had a happy death. And I think that's comforting to us. And I think it was comforting to her to feel that way. And if you can get comfortable with the idea, I think that's a big help.
It helps that she was not in pain. That's the hard part for families to endure, as well as when their mother and father are in pain. You know, you just are conflicted because you don't want to lose them, but you don't want them to see pain and suffering either. So it's very fortunate that we haven't endured that in our family in general. We haven't had long suffering illnesses, and you're surely haven't suffered that. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that too. That um, the end of that you've talked about before. You don't really want to be in pain, and how you deal with that, because we don't have control over that. And modern medicine is better at controlling that now, but that that has something to do with how your family's going to react to you in the end days, and things that you don't want to suffer so much pain. You'd rather have hospice manage that and things. I wondered if you could talk a little on that.
Yeah, the book is helpful. But I think hospice is a wonderful thing that's been invented and is available. And what you have to do is fill out papers that are legal, and they tell the doctors and the hospitals how you want to be treated at this last time. Do you want every possible method and medicine tried on you and be an experimental animal for these things, and try everything possible, or not? And I think it's important to think that out and then write it down, and then you have to give it to the hospital or your doctor, and they put it in their file so that when you are rushed to the hospital with some heart attack or stroke or whatever, they will know how to treat you, because it's written right there in your hospital record, and you put it in there when you were well and thinking straight. So that's a wonderful feeling, a comfort to know that I'm going to be treated the way I want to be treated when I get into the hospital. Most people die in the hospital. Most people want to die at home. And hospice gives you a much better chance to die at home than if you don't go into hospice. But hospice can't prevent you from dying, but it can prevent pain. And you talked about pain. And there's no excuse, say the hospice people, for anybody dying in pain, because they have medications that they can give. But these are medications that are very dangerous, and they could hasten death. And their job is not to hasten death, but to eliminate pain. And so they know how to use them and how to space the medicine. And it makes your end time at least painless.
Right. Well, it is a great fear. And again, I think that's why families don't like to talk about it, because it is about painful things, physical pain and, deterioration and things. So, Mom, do you have any thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, it's really important to have a medical power of attorney, so that when you and a financial power of attorney, so when you get to the point where you cannot make the decisions for yourself, that person or those people, the two people for the medical power, there's one and then maybe a backup, but one has to know exactly what you want to happen and what you don't want to happen when you get to the end of life. If you don't want any extra methods to prolong your life, that has to be set out, and it has to be a legal document. So Tom and I have done that, and we went to a class that showed us all the legal papers, and sometimes you have to even update those papers. So every once in a while you have to look at them and make sure that they're up to date and that your doctor knows, the hospital knows where you would go if you needed to, and your family knows. So all that has to be done when you still have most of your mental faculties with you. And then whatever happens, you don't have to worry about it because there's nothing more you can do. You don't know when you're going to die. You don't know what's going to happen to make you die. But you know, if you have all that stuff in place, you don't need to worry about it.
Nice.
You have to realize that the doctor is sometimes sued because he didn't do everything. And so he wants to do everything unless you say, no, I don't want everything done. So if you just leave it up to him, you're going to get a lot more, you're going to live longer perhaps, but it won't be a happy death. And that's the goal, is to have a happy death and not to have a prolonged death. But you don't want, you're not asking for suicide either. So you have to think it through just how you want to be treated. Otherwise, the people around your bed will, if you have several children, for example, there's bound to be one that's a little bit hysterical and not very rational. And that's the person that will become, because the others will back off and let this hysterical one plan your death for you. And think about it. Are you sure you want them to make the decisions, or would you like to make them yourself? So we've got them all written out. And then, of course, there's financial things. Whatever's left after you go, where do your inheritances go, and how do you distribute them? And we've got that all in writing too, a financial record and where the things are and how to get them and appoint a person to make the distribution. And that's very helpful too. Have a will, in other words, have a real will, a legal will. That tells how that's going to be done, who's going to do it.
Well, it is really unusual that we have a family that's been so proactive in communication and planning and legal matters. A lot of families are a real mess that way, and they don't want to talk about that either. So I consider myself extremely fortunate to have parents that have done that for us and with us, and have explained how that is designed to work. That takes a tremendous amount of organization, but it takes a tremendous amount of pressure off of us because we don't have to have those discussions post-mortem. And what would Dad want? What would Mom want? And Sheridan's right here. I want him to stop in and say hi.
Oh yeah, there's Sheridan.
Hi.
Jump in and say
Yeah.
hi.
Birthday.
Take a knee right here.
We have
Yeah.
3 generations now
Yeah,
here.
does it
Yeah.
feel like you feel older today?
Now
than you
you're
did
old.
yesterday?
Whole 55 years. Yeah, I can hear you now. He took his headset off, but yeah, a whole quarter century.
Do you feel older than you did yesterday?
A little bit.
Yes.
A little bit more experience, right?
And you get to be 29.
You're,
I know.
you're our youngest grandson, but now we have a great granddaughter in Ireland and a
Mhm.
great granddaughter, a second one on the way. So we'll have those kids. But Barbara, you were going to talk about Ivan, your husband. Before we were married 10 years ago, you had a husband that died.
Yeah, both Marilyn and Ivan, my husband, died at home with hospice. And in Ivan's case, he was on hospice for almost a year. But
Oh,
he
wow.
died at home, and the night before he died, he was it was December 23rd, the day he died. So the night before, one of our neighbors came over with a fruit basket for Christmas. And he got to talking about, kind of like Tom, he was a talker, like a storyteller. And he was joking and laughing and having a good time, all the while with, the oxygen. He had lung problems and died of complications due to pulmonary hypertension, which is kind of like COPD, but not exactly the same thing. But the next day, the hospice nurse was there. My son David was here, I was here, and he just died. And it was a good death for him. And even though it took almost a year of him living mostly in his recliner, he could get up to go to the bathroom, and he had television and friends coming in and things like that. But I think we both handled those deaths of our spouses really well.
Yes, so we don't have any regrets. And we were lucky to meet a lot of the people here at Good Samaritan. They lost their mate before they moved in here, or they lose their mate after they moved in here. And then they're alone. And Dan talked about loneliness. It's a real problem in old age, and it's hard to avoid it. Barbara and I are just happy as we can be together. But a lot of couples don't get along very well. And then when you're together 24 hours a day, it can be another kind of hell. So you don't want to, you don't want to be lonely, but you don't want to live with somebody that you are fighting with all the time either.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
Sheridan, good to see you.
It's good to see you both.
Yes.
You look good.
I think family is the most important thing that we have, and we have a double family with us. So we have like 8 children and all these grandchildren, now great-grandchildren. And that's the happy times in our old age. So happy birthday, Sheridan. Hope you have many.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a good one.
No, he's just taking off. I'm glad he had a chance to be back here after his appointments, and now he's on for his evening. And so you're on tape, man. You're recorded.
Yeah. Better watch what I say. Bye, guys.
Okay.
Love you both.
So
All right. See you soon.
the picture behind Dan on the wall is of Dan and I in a rubber raft going down the Arkansas River probably 40 years ago. You were only like 20 years old or something in there. Yeah, it's 40 years old. I wouldn't think of doing that now, hanging on the side of a rubber raft going down the rapids, but those are wonderful times. So you do a lot of time reminiscing. And so you want to have good things to reminisce about, and reminiscences. And we've had a lot of those. Barbara and I have traveled all over the world. And even before Marilyn and I, and her and Ivan traveled. And so we've been in many parts of the country and even foreign countries. And that's, now we have those memories. We look at pictures and talk about the old times. And a lot of people, hate that. They want to live in the future, live in the present. Well, we do too. We live that. We know a lot of people here. We have friends. We sit out on our patio and wave to them as they go by in the morning on their morning walk. And you have to walk early in the morning where it gets to be 90 degrees. And then you can walk in the cool of the morning. And a lot of people walking here. And keep walking. That's the way you keep walking, is to keep walking. You don't have, they say you only have so many days to live. You don't know how many there are, but it's a limited number. But as far as walking is concerned, the more you walk, the longer you're able to walk. And so that's another goal I have, is I try to walk every day, walk up to the mailbox at least, so that I can still walk and talk, even if I can't hear and see.
That's right. I know when Sheridan was born, I had just done a simple calculation saying at age 35, I've lived approximately 13,000 days. It just kind of put a different perspective on it. and I've lived 13,000 days, and I always will be 13,000 days ahead of my son. How much have I really learned in those 13,000 days that I can pass on to him, that he may catch up with me? He may have a lot more life experience and life under his belt by the time I'm old, and those 13,000 days will be compressed down to nothing as far as his life experiences, and that's the compression of time, I think. And a lot of people have regrets about growing old and not doing the things that they always wanted to do. So I guess another subject about the end of life is about the bucket list. And do you have a bucket list that you still want to take another piece out of, and something more you want to do?
You have a bucket list?
You know, we did. Barbara and I, we wanted to make these trips. In 2016, we went to Alaska. We took the Alaska train all the way up to Denali, the tallest mountain in North America, and we enjoyed that trip. We saw glaciers. But that was on our bucket list, but it's over now. I mean, we've done all the things. We keep saying, is there anything more that we need to do?
Well, there's some places we'd like to go, but it may not happen with this.
I was hoping that you may want to go down to San Miguel de Allende in Mexico one more time, so I could go with you. I'd love to go and have you show me around, tell me the sights. So that is
Maybe we can. People do that at San Miguel de Allende or at Green Valley, Arizona. We've been to both places, and they bring along one of their children, and that's, to drive and to show them around and introduce friends. And I think that'd be a good thing to do. That we can't drive any more long distances. I can't drive at all, and Barbara drives very well, but gets tired. And so having one of our children drive us somewhere, and we did that at a family reunion in 2018. We drove up to South Dakota, Custer, and somebody had to drive us both ways. And we liked that very much and enjoyed it.
Talked about doing other cruises too.
Yeah.
Cruising is a good way to
right.
go.
The pandemic is, kind of putting a kibosh on some of these dreams, but it's not going to be forever.
Yeah, we
And
thought
so-
we would go on the Mississippi River and take a river cruise. And we had thought about doing that this fall, but that's going to take off. Maybe next year we can do that.
Yeah.
But if we did that, we would start in St. Louis and go north to Minneapolis.
Yeah,
that
and
would
then
be
Mississippi.
Another section of the Mississippi that we have not been on. We've been down to New Orleans and a little bit that way, but not so much north. Or the Columbia River. That was another one that.
Oh, yes, we like to travel. And a lot of people find traveling so stressful that they don't do it. They're kind of afraid, I think. But we've done that both of us, since we were young. And Barbara's been to India, and we both went to Africa at different times before we knew each other. So we've traveled a lot, and that's been, the memories are great.
The Dalmatian coast. Is that another one? The
Yeah.
Croatia, the trip that you took. Dan.
Yeah, Dan and Cheryl went
That's-
to
Neither one of us have been to that area, and
Yeah.
that just is fabulous
Well,
to us.
Yep. It's still a big world, as small as it is, and how much you travel. There's still places to go. I know.
There's still places to
I
go.
don't
right?
think anything else is on my bucket list. Is there any?
Not
yours?
now. I think we really have it. It's nice. It'd be nice to go, but it isn't as important. And then because of our age, we run out of steam quickly, and so I'm not sure that we would enjoy it as much as we did when we were younger. There's some things you do when you're older, and there's things you do when you're younger. When you're older, you sit and talk and have conversation and visit with your family and so on. And when you're younger, you do more physical things.
The
So-
first Bush president, when he was 90, he jumped out of a airplane, helicopter,
and it was a parachute.
with a, well, of
But-
course.
Bungee jumping and paragliding and things
Yeah.
I don't think you ever did it.
He was a World War II veteran who got shot down in the Atlantic, and plane shot out from under him, and he landed up in the water. And he was rescued to become our president, and then went on. He was quite an outdoorsman. Well,
Well, I wondered if there was kind of a non-active activity, if you could sit down and talk with anyone in the world before you go, who would it be? Do you have a favorite dream of sitting down and talking to someone? It would have to be somebody that's still here with us, I suppose, unless you had an invitation conversation with Winston Churchill or something like that. But is there a person in current events, famous or not, that you would like to talk with before you die? You know, just kind of,
Gosh.
that's a bucket list thing.
I don't know. Right now, we're reading a book on Celtic spirituality. And there's a community in the island of Iona, which is off of the west coast of Scotland,
Ah.
the Hebrides Islands. And they have a community there that ever since the 4th century AD, there have been people on that island who have cherished the tradition of the Celtic spirituality, which is really different from the Roman Christian tradition. And so today we were reading this book together about George MacLeod, and unfortunately he died in 1991, but he kind of resurrected the Iona community, and he sounded like such a fun person to be around. He has a good sense of humor. And he's the one who said,
yeah, I thought about death, and
I
I'm in favor of
totally
it.
I'm in favor of it. But, so he had a lot of.
Yeah, living long, living long has its challenges, but I'm still a fan.
So
Yeah,
that
the
would be
alternative.
one place, one person, if he were still around. That
Well, Barbara reads to me because I have macular degeneration, but I've read a lot through my life when I had good eyes. And when she reads at the breakfast table, then we discuss the book, and we've read several books. It's slow going because we talk about it as much as we read. But I read by talking books that go with earphones, and I listen to somebody else read the books to me. And I've used that method of reading. I've read many presidents, the biographies and autobiographies of presidents. So I think I would like to meet Joe Biden. If I
was going to say that too,
yeah.
or Kamala Harris.
He's on TV today announcing his Kamala Harris pick for vice president. And I think I'd like, he's been around and he could tell some stories, I'm sure. And I would like to talk to him.
Okay, well, that's one we could work on. That's something we could do our best to arrange that, but we'll see. He's kind of a busy guy right now.
Another person I would really love to talk to is Melinda Gates, the wife of Bill Gates. She has written a book recently called A Moment of Lift. And it's about, the analogy is of when an airplane taxis down the runway and it's still on the ground. And then all of a sudden it takes off and it that moment of lift is such an exciting moment. And she compares that to what she would like to see for women, having a moment of lift for women all over the world to help them gain equality with men in wages and respect and living, all kinds of ways that women are still not equal with men. So I would love to be able to jet off to California and have lunch with Melinda Gates.
Yes.
I like it. I like it.
And I think reading books or having them read to you either by your wife or by a recorded recording with earphones on, I think reading is a wonderful way to meet people and extend your life and not be lonely. They bring people into your life, and people, to me, they just come alive in these books that I've been listening to, and I highly recommend reading in old age. It's cheap, it's easy, and it's wonderful. So
Yeah, it's
read on.
another way to travel, and
Yeah.
you don't even have to leave your chair. It's I agree, wonderful medium, and one that exercises all parts of your brain. So,
Yeah.
well, we'll work on that. We're coming up on the hour, and
Okay.
we're gonna get kicked off. I think this has been
Okay. We'll
great time.
have to end this then.
Right. Any final statements or thoughts?
Yeah,
Keep your sense of humor.
yeah, keep a sense of humor, right? Laugh at things that other people might can take very seriously. Yeah, it's good.
What is our mantra about relationships?
Oh yes, relationships. You can't say I love you or thank you too many times. And relationships aren't just important, they are everything. That's our motto. Barbara and I, we live on that.
That is, and that's why, I just love these talks. Our relationship is so great, and we really wish that for so many families that, either don't have good relationship with their children or parents, that is a gift of wealth that is immeasurable. And I thank you both for all of the wealth you give me. That's my thought. So be good. We'll catch you on the next one. And I suppose we'll be talking after I'm back from a little tour around the state.
Right. Oh, have a wonderful trip.
Yes.
Yes, we'll do it.
See you when you're back.
One
Bye-bye.
final thought is, when you live long enough, your bucket list may be zero because the bottom rusted out. But at least it didn't spill over on anybody, so it's all good. Be good. Have a great day. Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.